LETRS training is available to everyone. So why is Minnesota Department of Education taking it further? This work is part of Minnesota's commitment to equity. We are connecting this work to measuring what matters, really valuing people and what they know, and how to use what we've learning from our community partners to improve conditions for learning of teachers and learning for students. So why is Minnesota Department of Ed going further with just a training program? Well, as Ulysses was sailing through on his Odyssey, he came across the sirens. He knew that things might distract him and pull him off course, even though he wasn't entirely sure what it would be. So he had himself tied to the mast as a protection to changing his mind. He had his sailors wax stuffed in their ears so that they would continue to not be distracted by the sirens. So as instructional leaders, we know that things may pull us off course and distract us from our intended target, and we can protect ourselves from variation or losing focus. We know that training has to accommodate for a lot of knowledge. The Big Five from the National Reading Panel Report has been codified as the pillars of instruction, but these pillars of instruction aren't even the same kinds of things. So translating them into teachable, doable, repeatable practices at a system level is really hard when you think about phonemic awareness as being a type of knowledge that students have to develop and master before they can benefit from instruction linking print to sound, phonics, before they can master fluency, which is an outcome of learning phonics and decoding, and apply it to their vocabulary knowledge and reasoning through text with words that they may not have multiple definitions for in order to comprehend or make sense of print without speaking. So phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary comprehension are topics that have been converted into allocated times, instructional sequences, and instructional materials, but they're not even the same thing. So Minnesota Department of Education realized that the language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling was science of reading, evidence-based practices, instructional routines wrapped into one thing. It teaches teachers how to be systematic and explicit in developing their literacy. Staff learn to apply the science of reading and how that translates into developing oral and written language skills, how to assess those skills and make data-based decision-making, how to use the data to inform which instructional routines they pick for different content areas, how to give them specific feedback and tools for engaging all students in growing their skills, how to scaffold and even cognitively support the reading development of some of our most struggling readers. This content is learned via reading, watching video models, participating in quizzes, and hands-on practice in face-to-face training and debriefs. At some points, extended guidance and guided practice is available because content can be pretty tricky. Many have suggested that it's a master's level course in reading instruction. LETRS did have behavioral objectives that define for testing, training, and coaching what teachers are supposed to do. Content is periodically updated or revised. LETRS is now in its 3rd edition and better than it's ever been. But we know that comprehensive training in oral, written, and language skills and writing skills is exactly what we need. We need defined knowledge and instructional routines. We need to know that it's effective in changing teacher practice. That's what LETRS is. It's not a curriculum or set of materials. Teachers still have to go through the transfer of process. It's not more of the same phonics approach that we have been saddled with. It's not disability focused. It is all ed and it's multi-tiered systems of support focused. It doesn't take us away from standards-based instruction or developing proficiency in the standards. And it's not just for teachers. LETRS is a comprehensive training program. We can know better and do better. But that requires an extended commitment. So as Minnesota Department of Education's team completed LETRS, we realized that we were having a big ask. In our very first year, we realized that reading the text was about 16 hours of work, and looking at the guided videos, the practice, the tests, and online work would take about 37 hours. Teachers would complete case studies and rehearse what they were learning, embedded in their teaching. And they would be connecting concepts and translating the content from LETRS into their daily instruction in 4 days full face-to-face. So that's an 85 to 95 hour commitment. The results aren't in yet, and we don't know if we can take a lighter approach. We don't know which of these things we could cut if we want to see teachers use structured literacy and evidence-based practices on a daily basis. We know that kids can't benefit from what teachers can't do competently. So in order to get teachers and kids to benefit, they actually have to practice and get feedback, and they have to have implementation supports. This is often pretty heady or seeming theoretical, so let's make it practical. So a teacher going through LETRS must master the content and practice that they're learning and training. So she walks out and she engages students in systematic reading instruction that's systematic and explicit. It makes mapping sounds to print the instructional methodology or process. She or he is working through how to scaffold instruction that graduates from an instructional sequence of simple to complex daily and across the week. She's receiving and giving timely feedback about kids' errors and giving them immediate opportunities to try again in order to get accuracy and proficiency. She or he is engaging with these sufficient practice opportunities to make sure all students can be accurate and automatic when reading and writing extended sections of text. So in order for her to do that, she has to go do that in her daily classroom. And that requires transferring understanding of how that reading develops from pre-literate to proficient readers, integrating that new and existing knowledge. So the practices learned in LETRS need to be done daily with fidelity in addition to what they're already doing in the classroom. We need to have data-driven decision-making with the right assessment data that's usable to form groups to determine whole group from small group instruction, match the needs to instruction or scaffolding, and adjust it based on where the kids are progressing. She or he has to determine the groupings, the scaffolding, and sufficient practice opportunities, regardless of what the core instructional or intervention instructional materials may provide. And then we need to be able to have time to action plan and strengthen the implementation. So we're finding that teachers get a first pass at the knowledge, they develop competence, they need to develop organizational supports and have the data and the data systems to support their continued growth and competence. Those teachers are now working in a system that can be supportive or unsupportive. So as teachers are completing LETRS, we know that they need quick and usable data for multiple decisions that may or may not be there in practice. They need leaders to remove barriers to daily implementation. Core instruction has to reallocate the time they allow for phonics instruction and build in more phonemic awareness at grades that they didn't even know they needed to continue to teach phonemic awareness. Interventions need to be a bit longer for teachers to really focus in on the content, and those providing intensive intervention need to maybe source new materials because they're continually building from scratch. We need access to expertise and coaching to get answers to questions that hadn't been asked or trained on and make adjustments. And we need a culture of action planning and improvement. This is not a train and hope. It is a train and do and get better. Those teachers need to work with administrators in a system that can support them. So administrators need access to expertise and highly supportive resources as well. They need protected time from skilled coaches to work with teachers to be proficient in the content, the practices, and keep measuring their translation of training to fidelity in the daily lessons. They need data-driven policies and funding and resources dedicated to support and help teachers implement those practices daily. And they too need to be a part of a culture of data-based problem solving and continuous improvement. So having a sense that teachers would need more than just training, we set out a year ago to establish a pilot project. We had 2 implementation sites with the Grace Hmong College Prep Academy and East Central Elementary. They decided to go first. They enrolled a cross-section of K-2 general ed, special ed, interventionists, EL teachers, and related services support staff to be a part of our training program. We also had 15 pre-service instructors join to learn what they could do to integrate the content into their pre-service training programs or graduate programs. We had administrators join in to explore what the content was about and figure out how they might develop district-wide capacity. So in year 1, that's what we intended, to provide training and make sure that people could get from the beginning to the end. Along the way, we've realized that teachers need to have sufficient practice and feedback with the content. They need to learn it at a different level. They have to internalize this content so they can make it easy to use with students on a daily basis. They need more guidance translating what they've learned in training to the supports they have for delivering daily instruction. They need to explicitly practice with real students and learn how to provide effective and systematic feedback and give more practice opportunities that they learn to do in training. And they're going to need some coaching in the critical features of instruction, having a data system that supports their database decisions and being held accountable to following through when the going gets tough. Their organization needs to have that system of assessments. There are places where we don't have screeners for the advanced levels of phonemic awareness. We don't have the system in place to progress monitor sound deletion or sound manipulation. They need guidance and coaching to use the data for grouping and intensifying instruction. When should a teacher do whole group versus small group instruction? When does a student have so much exposure they're ready for a next intervention or a next intensive intervention? We need to remove policies and practices that prevent teachers from implementing instructional practices. The very first thing that got broken when we hit Unit 3 was the phonics talks were not sufficient in length for the teachers to deliver the instructional practices they learned in training. So they need a longer allocation of time. The core instruction materials didn't provide enough for teachers to convert the lessons. So some abandoned their core instruction materials and adopted intervention phonics talks so that they could do the practices as they were trained. And in that way, they had to compensate for those low instructional support materials and overcome the barriers of insufficient or inadequate resources. And this is just year one. So we built out this formula for success for ourselves. We started with defined knowledge, practices, routines, science, and application with LETRS. And we had to build out a measure of fidelity to know were teachers able to go from training into putting it into the classroom. We learned that allocating time in reading blocks that has to be organized to support delivery. We've had to build some data dashboards for teachers to be able to form groups, determine instruction, monitor progress, and determine if those materials are sufficient to support their delivery on a daily basis. We've had to develop shared language across the system. It's been an amazing experience to watch all ed work in a room and develop shared language and determine which terms they were going to use and how that supported them in communicating with each other. We've talked about how to use data to shift from training into coaching. How do we know when teachers have really benefited from training and when they're ready for coaching? Coaches can't coach 77 teachers at a time. So how do we know when the teachers have had a sufficient training and effective training that they're ready for coaching? So we've started to measure fidelity to support the transfer and mastery of the practices taught in LETRS into the daily classroom. We're making action planning and improvement cycles in order to prepare coaches and support coaches to do this work. And we're waiting for significant outcomes because right now the students haven't benefited from all the training the teachers has received. So we're still more to come. But those are all the reasons why Minnesota Department of Ed has gone beyond just training in LETRS. It's available to anyone in the state. But if you want to learn how to apply the formula of success, you might want to wait for Minnesota to learn how to do LETRS implementation well, so we can see how to do it where we actually close the achievement gap for all struggling readers. This has been a webinar from your dyslexia literacy team, and feel free to replay this webinar or send it out. Have a good day. I wish you could edit these things. I said, I wish you could edit these things.